The Joy in Goal Setting podcast is proud to be partnered with and brought to you by The Ideal Life. The Ideal Life offers a multimedia platform that is focused on cultivating a growth mindset. Here, you'll find a supportive community of coaches, valuable online resources, and transformative courses aimed at helping you lead a more gratifying and joyful life. Ready to take the next step in your personal growth journey? Visit theideallife.com to explore their wealth of resources and join their vibrant, growing community today. Welcome to the Joy in Goal Setting podcast, where we empower individuals to discover their purpose, achieve their goals, and experience a joyful life through encouraging conversations. I'm your host, Hudson Dodds. Today, we're sitting down with Angie Spinelli, a fitness trainer, grandmother, and community volunteer. We discuss having realistic fitness goals, community involvement, and how to make your New Year goals stick. Angie, welcome to the show. So glad you're here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So Angie, I'm curious to know a few things. One, where are you from?
I'm originally from Auburn, Alabama, but I grew up in Savannah, Georgia.
Okay. So are you an Auburn fan?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Bleed orange and blue.
So you were happy to see the Tide knocked out early.
Yeah, well, I wasn't so happy to see the bowl game that Auburn was in because they didn't look very good, but it is what it is.
Nice. Okay, so then you grew up in Savannah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And you're in the personal fitness space. How did you get in that world?
It's really kind of a funny story. So I had 6 children at the time, and a girlfriend of mine and I would go to this gym and take the classes. And she was like, do you want to get certified, to teach classes? I said, absolutely not. I said, there's no way that I can get up in front of people. And she was like, well, just look at some of the people that do it. Yeah, you can. I was like, no. She said, well, if you teach classes, you get a free gym membership. And I was like, okay, sign me up.
Sign me up.
And that was 20 years ago. So.
That's a trip. And was that in Charleston?
That was in Charleston.
What gym was that with?
It was in 2003. I wasn't affiliated with the gym yet. I went as a member to a gym called LifeQuest.
Yeah, I went to LifeQuest.
Yes. I went to LifeQuest. Yes, because it would have been right around from your school.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's so funny. And so you get certified, you start training. Is it what you thought it'd be? Was it better than you thought it would be? Obviously you fell in love with it, you're still doing it.
Right. Well, don't think I really had necessarily expectations about it, but I will tell you the first class that I taught, I was terrible. And it just kind of grew from there, getting more certifications with the class situation, but then I branched out into the personal training
side of it.
Mm-hmm.
So do you find yourself enjoying the one-on-one a lot more than like group setting?
No, I like them both. Not necessarily one better than the other. It's just the way I ended up, kind of wearing several hats within the company. So.
Yeah. So the first one was terrible, you said. We love failure because that means you can have a chance to grow. Yeah, so how did you take that first, oh my gosh, this is miserable, and not say, this is not for me, but instead say, I'm going to keep going on. What did you do there?
Well, I thought I was very prepared at the time, and I had written it all out for this class. And it was an hour-long class, and I got through everything I had written down in about 30 minutes. And I wasn't ready to give up, I wanted to learn more, and the more I did it, the more I learned, and the more comfortable I became doing it. So then it just seems natural.
Yeah. And have you had a lot of long-time clients?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So 2 of the people that I first started out with are now my very best friends. So I've been teaching them for like 19 years.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So have you found that the training space fits with your personality in terms of like community building or relationship building? Is that who you are naturally outside of work, or is that different?
No, I think it's a big part is the community building. I love that. I love being part of the fitness community, and it is, given me opportunities to do other community work that I'm very passionate about. So it's making those connections.
Yeah. What specifically outside of training in the community have you fallen in love with, or through training has given you opportunity to get involved with in the community?
I am on the committee for Patterson's Academy. It is a school in West Ashley for children with multiple severe disabilities. It's a charter school, so they're funded, just through their fundraising, and the work they do is just incredible. So this, I believe, is my 4th year. So every year they have a spinning marathon.
Oh, cool.
That's like 3 hours, and so we're already in the planning stages of that. And to have instructors up there to teach, and they bring the kids out, and it's a beautiful community event.
That's so cool. What attracted you to that community, that work that you enjoyed doing?
Well, actually, I had a friend at the time. We weren't that close, and she used to come to another gym that I was at, and she had a child that went to Patterson's, and her child ended up passing away, and I ended up training her. So that's kind of where my passion for Patterson's was born, because it benefited another family.
Someone else you love.
Yes. And then I got asked to be on the committee, and I was like, absolutely.
Yeah, that's really cool. Have you, while on the committee and on board, wherever it is, have you found your expertise how have you been able to use your expertise from training? Because obviously I'm not talking about personal training there, but how have you, I'm sure there's lots of crossover skills you've been able to help provide them.
Right. Well, the way I have been, my position on the committee has really been to, gather the instructors for the event, and the planning leading up to that, and, getting the bikes there. We've done it the last few years outdoors, after COVID. So that's been really cool, just to do that. So that's kind of my role with them.
Yeah.
I do seek after sponsorships for them as well. We all do that as a committee. So it's just using those community connections to help Patterson's.
Yeah, that's really neat. So we talk about goal setting, of course, and you're in the fitness space, which is a lot of goal setting, I'd imagine.
Absolutely.
Are you someone who you would say likes to set your own personal goals, and that's always been a part of your life? Have you learned to set your own goals because you're doing it with other people, or is that something that's still kind of outside of your wheelhouse personally?
I kind of color outside the lines a little bit for myself. Do I have personal goals? Absolutely. And is that one of the first questions when you're, about to train someone? Certainly you want to sit down and go over those goals with them so that they can see, look back and see how far they've come.
Yeah. So do you find it with certain clients it's much easier to set goals versus other clients?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because some people are like me and they color outside the lines, and it's a little bit harder to get them, to set their specific goals.
Yeah.
And then other people, it's ingrained in them.
Sure.
So it's very easy for them.
I'm sure there's a lot of folks that, it's the new year and they're probably thinking, I want to kind of get my life back on track, and oftentimes that revolves around health. Are there any tips that you could share that you found specifically with those folks that are like kind of hard to nail down goals, or it's hard for them to think of how to set them, that you found that have worked well?
I always use the approach, and this is what I'll tell people right off the cuff, is you're only going to get out of it what you're willing to put into it. So that kind of encapsulates, hey, if you have this big goal, you've got to take these steps to reach it for it to be attainable.
Yeah. So we talk a lot about the 7 life roles. One of those is health. And something that, I don't know if you've seen The Weight of Gold with Michael Phelps, and it's a really interesting documentary. But talking about these athletes who they win gold medals, they achieve the highest level, and then afterwards they feel depressed. And one of the biggest things that we found through science and with the framework is that if you set the goal to be your end of your life and then work backwards, then when you reach that pinnacle, if you will, it's not a pinnacle because actually it's just one more step. Do you find Have you found that with your clients as well, as when you can tie those goals to like kind of lifelong goals? That's been helpful. Have you ever tried that before?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, we work on the short-term goal versus the long-term goal. And I think that can always be reinvented once you hit that level. It's like, what's the next goal that you have?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's so interesting. I'm imagining like group settings different than personal. Obviously, I've done personal training for a long time myself. Never done group training outside of like with sports teams. Do you work on like as a collective group trying to work towards some kind of goal? Do you ever talk about goals in that way? Have you found that to be productive?
Yeah, it really has. You can always do it in the general sense with a bigger group like that. Well, whether it's small group training or in a class setting. But I always like to add that element in because the biggest thing for me to see that I love to see, whether it's one-on-one or with a group, is people's confidence grow within a gym setting.
That's in the community space. Yeah, so maybe that kind of leads me to my next question. Like I said, we're new year, people start, and then we know that I'm sure there's a statistic out there of all the folks that don't continue. What have you seen as like the number one blocker for folks who start strong and then they fade away and you never see them again?
There's not just one, I don't think. I think it can be change in life circumstances. It's kind of what you're saying, too, where they start off all gung-ho because it's the new year, and then it becomes less of a priority for them.
Yeah.
Something else takes that place, just different things like that.
Yeah, I think back, a mentor tell me this, and this one of the truer things is we find time for things that we value.
Exactly.
And it's not that we don't have the time, it's that we don't value it enough to give it the time.
I say that all the time. We all have the same 24 hours. It's what your priorities are.
Yeah, yeah. And so for us, we think about priorities, we think about values, and oftentimes we prioritize work and sometimes family and wealth, and they kind of we center, especially in America, on these couple few. We figure out the rest of our life, and then how that time needs to fit in order for us to be a balanced kind of human. The wellness space is taking over in a different kind of way, not just how you look or eat, but kind of the whole person. Have you found that you've been able to translate that into your practice as well as you train folks?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's huge. And I just, within the last year, got a new certification, and it's a women's coaching specialty certification. So it's made me have a different outlook on that. And like I was saying, it's all about the confidence for me to see grow in people.
Yeah. Well, tell me about that. That new specific certification. How has that transformed your training?
Well, I had already always had the general, like PT certifications, and this one just appealed to me because it went through. It was very comprehensive with every phase of the life of a woman, right? And as a mother, and I don't like to say the grandmother word. I call myself Gigi, so we all say the G word. I've been through all of these experiences, and it really, to hone my skill that way to help other women walk through that. And one of the big things in that is like the biggest roadblocks for women, which goes back to what you were talking about, priorities.
Yeah.
We're so busy taking care of everybody else that sometimes we lag behind taking care of ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's really trying to teach them that it's okay to put yourself as a priority.
Yeah, I would imagine, and I guess you're hitting on it, that I could see folks feeling guilty for taking care of themselves because that means they're saying no to someone else potentially. How have you combated that to help them understand that, no, it's important to take care of yourself?
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to. It's teaching them a new value system within their already existing one. And I'm not going to say it works 100% correctly every time, but it's just trying to keep them accountable to their workouts and to their fitness. And we were talking about the goals. I mean, long-term goals just for being able to move when you get even older into your 70s and 80s. And
yeah, I was thinking this morning on the way over here. I played sports in college, and I've been fascinated with health and wellness and for a long time. And for the longest time, it was for a specific purpose, which was to be the best athlete I could be. And in some ways, it still is sometimes for golf. But I was laughing at myself because for the first time in a long time, it's really about longevity, which is like, I guess, kind of a buzzword now, which I've been fascinated with for a long time. And 36, I'm not like, for a long, long time, but for a while, longer before it was kind of hip to think about longevity. But working out for what you just said and eating for what you just said and going to the sauna for what you said, not so that I could be peak performance, although that's part of it. It's more so that when I'm 80 or 90, I can enjoy all the things with my great-grandkids and not be in a position where I can't because I can take care of myself now.
Right, exactly.
And I'm assuming you probably see that with everyone, but I guess what you're saying with women as well, this idea of like taking care of self for your long-term self.
Mm-hmm. And, what I've noticed a lot lately, too, is, I've been in contact more with like women in their 70s and their 80s. And the ones that have been active most of their life, I mean, you can just see absolutely. You can just see such a difference in how they move.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. No, my mother-in-law has been in the fitness world since the 80s, and she did aerobics and she did Pilates and she's done all the things.
Yeah.
She's doing yoga for a very long time now. And for years and years and years, she's been working with, 50s and up, I would say, for the most part.
Right.
And it's more on mobility and balance and quality of life, not on necessarily strength to be strong or flexible to be flexible, but because it's when it's going to give you the quality of life you want.
Exactly.
More than anything, which I think is fascinating.
Well, I think the fitness industry, too, has evolved so much, and people recognize that now. Especially people of my generation, we're not necessarily out trying to have our bikini bodies that we had, or that's just, probably a poor example, but it really is to be strong and to move.
Do functional strength, I think, is the word that, I've seen oftentimes referred to, which is like, can you carry your groceries inside?
Right. Well, I'm a very functional trainer, so it's really kind of funny that you mentioned that because that's my approach.
Oh, interesting.
In the very beginning. Obviously you assess people to see how they move. You look for maybe where there's an imbalance or an area that they need to work on. Have them stand on one foot,
Right.
Close your eyes, do those kind of things, because that is what will be beneficial to them, in the future.
So you were talking about goal setting and setting up some goals at the beginning with your client so they could see kind of visual representation of where they came from, which we know is like how you release your positive chemicals is by actively seeing the results in a visual way, not just physical, but an actual visual way. In a functional standpoint, how do you set goals where you can visually see, or is it because you can talk to them about like, okay, well, we're gonna work on balance and how long can you stand on one leg? I was curious, like how does because it's obvious, growing up and working out with sports, it's like, okay, my goal is to squat 500 pounds.
Right.
Well, I can visually get there and say, I'm getting closer. But when it comes to other functional things, how do you see those?
Well, it's funny because I have a perfect example of that with a client of mine, and I actually inherited her, but she had an Achilles injury, and she came back from that, and she wanted to have enough mobility and strength. She teaches younger children, so to be able to squat down on the floor and get back up without any problem, that was part of one of her goals. And now looking back a few years later, I think we've been training together maybe 3 years. She'll still bring that up. She'll still say, I remember when I couldn't even do that when we first started.
Right. Like, can you believe that that's where we started, was just like sitting down and standing up, and now look how far we've gotten.
Right, and she's in her 50s. She's active. So, I mean, it was just, coming back from that injury and, trying to get back to where she could comfortably do those things again.
Yeah. If you want to discover how the Ideal Life's founder, Mark Condon, quit smoking, shed 80 pounds, established a thriving logistics company, and embraced the challenges of becoming an Ironman triathlete, all thanks to the framework we referenced in today's episode, order your copy of his inspiring book, The Ideal Life, today with their website or any major retailer. Begin your journey towards a fulfilling life filled with purpose and achievement. So you said, kind of tongue-in-cheek, you got in the business because it was a way to have free exercise. So have you always been interested in health?
I think I was busy being a mom, so that really, it was probably more of an escape for me back then. I mean, I'm just being honest.
No, absolutely, I get it.
Listen, I've always loved, like, taking classes and working out. When I was a teenager, back in the day, my mom did, like, the step aerobics class. I think it was in a church, and I was hired to be like the babysitter of the children while they were taking the class, which meant I could take the classes for free at the time. I guess I was always looking for free. That really doesn't sound very good. So that's really when I started to dabble in it.
Yeah.
And I would, like a lot of people, like the people we're talking about, people that fall off, I would get interested in something for a while.
Kind of the fad thing. It's exciting, and then
and then it's like, yeah. And but, once I got into the field and really got, more involved and saw how beneficial it was, then yes, that's where my interest grew a little bit more. And it was just a different phase of my life because I, had children and they were in school.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was going to have another one after that. So I needed an interest in a hobby, which is what it started out as. I told you, I kind of fell into it. And then it turned into a career.
Yeah. So being mom was passion, but also needing something to do for yourself, like you're talking about.
Exactly.
Right? It's finding something for yourself.
Right.
And accepting that as knowing that's good.
Yeah.
Because you can't, if my water cup is full, I can't give you some of it, right? Like the old saying, you got to fill your cup up in order to pour yourself out.
And I think that comes with hindsight, looking back on that.
Sure.
I don't think it was necessarily intentional at the time.
Right.
And I'm sure that I had those feelings too, like we were talking about, women or people in general, not wanting to prioritize themselves. I'm talking from a mom's standpoint.
Sure.
Yeah. That there were probably times when I did feel guilty, and probably there was ebbs and flows where I stopped doing that. I'm talking prior to being in the business. So I'm sure I took those breaks myself as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's very common, especially as, parents. I think it's easy we want to be selfless, right? We're designed that way, and we find joy in that for sure. And we find joy in putting ourselves behind our kids and our spouse and those things. And that's good. On the flip side, we're a human. And we have our own needs, and we have our own, life roles that need filling. But it can be hard. It can be hard to not feel guilty. I think no matter who you are.
Right. Exactly.
I think, and if you're someone who does a lot of things for yourself, then you're not filling up your family bucket, which means you're not going to be filled up there, which will then lead to problems, right? So no matter what, there's going to be a problem if you're not filling them all up.
And like I said, for me, it's easy to look back on that hindsight as 2020, right? Did I know that when I was in the midst of it? Probably not. But now that I do, I like to pass that knowledge along to others,
Do you ever get clients in when you kind of sit down to set some goals, and their goals are like outrageously ambitious and you just know like this is too much?
Oh, yeah.
How do you handle that? How do you handle that?
No, I mean, that's just unrealistic expectations, right? When they start, they're going to set themselves up for failure.
Right.
And that's not exactly how I would say it. I would just probably plant the idea so their mind would shift. We would flip the script that way. So it'd be like, well, that's a great goal, but maybe we need to think about, are we going to be able to achieve that in the time that you need to?
Yeah. So helping them set realistic, achievable goals within the time frame.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so we talk about two different kinds of goals, ones that are time-bound and ones that are not really time-bound. I think that's helpful because it's good to dream. Like we need those dreams because then all the other goals can follow into those, or all those other ones can be a stepping stone towards the dream. But if the dream moves to a time-bound one, that's unachievable, and then the reverse happens. Opposed to being rewarded for achieving it, you get the negative feeling of, well, I failed.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And you never want to set anybody up for failure.
No. I think that working out is I think one of the best analogies for so many things in life. I talk to my kids about this all the time of failure and working out. I mean, the science behind building muscle is you tear it and then your body's like, I don't want to tear myself again, so I gotta get stronger so this won't happen again. And it's such a good analogy for just life. I mean, when you fail, the opportunity there is to be like a muscle. Is the only way to grow is by kind of failing. And in working out and training folks, I'm sure there's moments where people feel defeated probably because they're not seeing results fast enough or whatever it might be. How do you kind of coach them into persevering or continuing forward even though when it feels kind of, sticky?
Yeah. I think you just have to maintain a positive attitude with them. And kind of, like I said, not to use the same terminology, but you kind of have to flip the script with them a little bit. And, results take time. And there are going to be setbacks. But you need to keep plugging away at it because you're only going to get out of what you're willing to put into it.
Something I've always thought about, and I'm sure things are different now, but growing up when I was working out with, I was actually the Rob Short at Pitch Street Fitness for years, I would see him in there and he'd be in there from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Yeah.
I mean, he's starting a gym and other things, but he's working his tail off. And a lot of personal trainers are in there a lot. I mean, lots of hours, way more than 40 hours a week. And I would always think two things. One, how do you not get burnt out? And two, when do you work out? You know what I mean? Because you have these clients coming in. So to your point, I'm curious, how do you find time to fill your, personal training up? How do you when do you find your time to work out? And take care of
For
your
myself,
body?
that's
your body.
I made a commitment to myself. Well, when I was teaching, it's kind of different, right? Because when you're up there teaching a class and you're physically doing it with them,
you kind of get your exercise.
You kind of do. I mean, you're not. There are some certifications you go through that say this is not about you. It's not your workout.
Yeah.
But inevitably, if you're teaching 6 or 7 spin classes a week,
you're going to get some workout in.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I had a big shift because I started backing off of my class load, obviously, because, like I said, I wear multiple hats within the company. So I do group fitness management, teach classes and train clients at more than one location. And I was sliding. I was when the workday was over, I wanted to get out of there.
Done.
I have had a trainer, a good friend of mine, a couple of good friends of mine. So that's easy access for me. As a matter of fact, I was just thinking about that this morning. I really need to, get back in the groove with one of them. But for me, because I have been so steeped in that gym, I made the decision and commitment to myself to step outside of work. So I have a place where I go and practice yoga, and that's become
your space.
Well, it's my space, and honestly, and I believe in strength training too. I love to lift weights. I know that sounds strange to some people, but the strength training really is where it's at. For me, with the yoga, it's moving your body weight, and it's also
mindfulness.
Yeah,
all those things.
The mindfulness, the breath work. So that's been huge for me.
So you said you're in the management side as well. How long have you been doing that?
For a long time. Because once I started, teaching, there was a group fitness manager that left kind of abruptly. And the owner at the time was like, "Can you do it?" I really didn't know what I was doing,
Right.
to be honest, and things that certainly have changed. I'm trying to think, probably about 16,
Okay, it's for a long
17
time.
years.
Yeah.
I had not been teaching classes
For
very
very long.
before this happened.
Sounds like a thing with you. The thing you just fall backwards into
I
things
know,
and you're
right?
good at it,
I mean,
I
it's
guess.
just, yeah. I mean, God just leads you on a path. And, I just have went with it. And all these, different doors kept opening. And I know, too, when one door closes, another opens, but the reverse is true as well. Sometimes you have to be willing to let go of something you're
You have to be able
holding
to say
on.
no. Yeah.
In order to open up your palm to receive something else. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where the shift that I've made within the last several years is like, okay, I'm juggling all these plates,
Yeah.
but which one is really the plate that I need to be, holding up the
Focused on.
most? So
Yeah. Well, we talk about deliberate practice, and that reminds me of that. Is this, we can't juggle that many plates for too long. It's impossible.
right.
We either will do them for too long and get burnt out, or we don't do them well, or they'll fall and whatever. And so finding that balance of picking the one thing to really focus on, and that unlocks energy to be able to do other things. But if you try and put all your energy in all the things, you have no energy left for anything.
Well, no, exactly.
So have you found yourself really enjoying the management side as much as you thought you would?
I love it because I still am interacting with people, and the special events that we have, like within the class setting, whether it's a launch or just kicking off a new program, where the community being involved in that kind of stuff, and we do the silly stuff too, right? So we'll dress up at Christmas time and teach classes. I've worn a gamut of Halloween costumes throughout the years. That part of it I do love. And it's afforded me too, because I do a lot of that administrative work at home.
Oh, yeah.
So I kind of sandwich it in between, the training hours and the class times.
Yeah, which isn't always available for trainers, right?
Right.
Have you ever thought about, not working for a company, for doing it on your own before? Like, having your own training space and doing it in other people's homes or in your own home?
Right.
Kind of thing?
And I do offer that service. Like, I don't have my own space outside of the gym just because it's where I'm very comfortable. But I definitely, explore the options and go outside if somebody wants me to come to their home. So I just recently moved from West Ashley to Somerville at the end of October. So that's been a big shift, and I'm in this
Yeah.
big neighborhood. So I have
There's lots of people.
right, yeah, and lots of women and lots of opportunity.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would want my own space,
Right.
just because at this point in my life I don't want to
Deal with all of them.
right, because it's a lot when you have
Yeah,
your
it's a big overhead. Yep.
right. It really is. So I am available for that as well, just the one-on-one. I have a boot camp that I started at Bees Landing Rec Center. We're 2 years old now.
Cool.
So that's been a lot of fun because it's
Yeah.
a community thing.
Right.
And I've got some of the same people that have been coming for 2 years. So that's a whole nother, just like growth process. And they have formed this community. And I love that.
Yeah, no, well, that's just, we were talking about community building, and you seem to be a builder yourself, and the joy of working from home. It's like, well, man, it seems like there's opportunity there, especially now you're in a big neighborhood. Like, I mean,
Right.
folks want ease, a lot of it, right? And there's a chance to kind of build. I don't know. I was just curious. Sounds like you're doing it, and sounds like it's going well.
Yeah.
Have you had a chance, or is there opportunity to use your expertise inside of, I forget the school, I'm sorry, Patterson's?
Patterson's?
Yeah.
Not as far as like they've got their own occupational therapist and physical therapist within, for the children. So not in that kind of role.
Yeah. Just was curious, with your love of the school and then obviously your expertise in fitness, if there was a way to cross over there. But it sounds like you're doing really cool stuff there. So you have lots of children. Are any of them into fitness?
No.
Not one.
Not one. Most of them followed their father's footsteps and are in food and bev. And,
Okay.
Yeah.
Food and bev is nice
too. Not all of them, but you know what I mean? Like.
Yeah. No, I have two kids, and I'm always curious, like, when they're young, and they're like, oh, I want to do what you do. I'm like, you don't even know what I do.
Right.
You don't even know, but I appreciate that you want to do that, and that is exciting for you, but, carve your own path. You know what I mean? That's so good. Well, what other hobbies do you have outside of work?
I told you, yoga is a big one. Bicycling. I mean, I love to, we've got bikes during the pandemic. And I hadn't had one in years. Not an outdoor. I mean, I had been spinning so much. So I really enjoy that.
Do you have any favorite routes you go on?
Well, we did the Spanish Moss Trail in Beaufort this summer. And that was really beautiful.
I haven't. How long is that trail?
I think that one's 16 miles.
Perfect.
It's really pretty.
We on New Year's Eve as a family we biked 10 miles on Kiowa. We're like, let's set a goal for the year to bike 100 miles. But we need some fun ones like this. They're a little bit different and kind of like an experience. Like we're gonna go and bike, a large chunk of time. But biking's so fun.
It's so fun, and just being outside, and I love it.
Yeah. Well, you get to see everything from a different perspective. Even though you're going pretty quickly.
Yeah.
No. So on New Year's Eve we did that, and my wife and I got bikes. I don't know. 5 years ago now, maybe more than that, maybe 8 years ago. And it's like I have like a city cruise or whatever, which is fine. And I had my hands in my pockets because it was freezing cold outside, and I don't do cold. And my seat flew off. And so I jumped off, starfished, and landed it.
Gosh.
And the bike kept on going. It was like a magic trick. I could never do it again in my life. Bike went off, hit the tree or whatever. Thank goodness he would put the bike seat back on, but I was like, this is a sign I need a new bicycle. If we're doing 100 miles, get in my bike seat flying off.
I think that would not be a good idea. And I love the Greenway too.
Greenway's phenomenal.
I love the Greenway.
Yeah, we Greenway is a great one. We've walked it a bunch. We've never biked it. We probably should as a family. I think it'd be a good one, a good space to do it. Well, you talked a lot about what keeps us from reaching our goals from a fitness perspective, a health perspective. What have you found, and it could be the same thing, but have you found anything else that folks that you've seen show up every week, week in, week out, and then hitting goals? What are some traits they have that maybe some folks can do on their own?
I would say consistency. I mean, consistency, and, being patient with yourself and your progress. And realistic. We talked about, people, setting these unrealistic goals that they're not going to attain. So just having those goals that are attainable, and consistency is key.
Yeah, just showing up.
And it's also recognizing all the elements. Okay, so if it's somebody that's coming in, I don't care if they're coming in and their goal is to lose 20 pounds, or if it's to gain, you've got to have that piece of the puzzle that's to make them understand how important the nutrition part is.
Yeah.
And
both and.
Yeah. And you can come see your trainer 3 times a week, but if you're going to go off the rails the rest of the time, you're just spinning your wheels. You're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And just hearing you say the 20 pounds thing, which I think is the most natural thing for a lot of folks, is I need to lose weight, which is probably true, right? But I think at least from what we found from the science perspective with goal setting is when that goal is tied to the why, the why do you want to lose 20 pounds? If it's just to look good, it's okay, let's talk. That's not going to keep you coming back.
Right.
But
No.
why really? And then when that can be tied to a value of theirs, maybe family, maybe it's, well, I want to, sit down with the kids I'm teaching. Or, well, now we're getting somewhere.
Exactly.
It's that why of the goal, I think, is just as important as what the goal is.
Yeah, we actually had that. It's funny because I did a couple of fitness assessments this morning, and these are newer ones that we're doing, and we have that on there. What is your why?
Oh, I love that.
That's one of the questions to ask them. What is your why? And, the few that I had today are the ones that I was saying are in their 70s and to stay active.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
their why. Why are you doing this? It's not that they have some specific goal other than to just stay as
Right.
healthy as possible for the rest of their life,
Right.
to keep
Yeah.
moving.
Yeah. Well, it's like to run a marathon. That's fantastic. Why? Mm-hmm. Well, because I think it'd be cool. Well, that's not going to keep it. It might, but then what?
Yeah.
Then what? But then what after that? Because you're going to, if you're committed to it, and then what?
Yeah.
Not to run two, but what's the purpose? And I think that so much helps you. My kids and I were watching Limitless. Have you seen Limitless before with
No, I
Ben
haven't.
Sinsworth? It's a phenomenal show on Disney Plus. But he's putting himself basically through all this like crazy tests. And I think I can't remember. I listened to podcasts with him and David Attia talking about like kind of the show. And I think originally it was more to like push himself to the limit. And then the more he got into it, the more it kind of turned into, well, I actually, speaking of longevity, like how can I have the best, longest life? And he's like, he played Thor. He's like this incredibly fit guy. And he's talking about how I want to live long. And you look at him and you think, well, if anyone's going to live long, it's going to be you. But in reality, he's talking about stress and how to maintain all of those things. That there's so much more than just the way you look. And nutrition's such a big part of it, but so is, all the things, sleep and,
Exactly.
I'm imagining as your client base has shifted, and as you mentioned, you're having more and more women, and it sounds like you have the age range is on the older side. I'm sure you have all ages, but have you seen some of those areas outside of the traditional thinking of like just how you look and eat easier? Like you said a little bit, it's easier for them to get on board with like sleep or stress management or things like that. Or some of those things like, yeah, I get that, or do you find it difficult sometimes to kind of quote unquote educate them on like why that really matters?
I don't necessarily think I find it difficult to educate them on that, or for them to grasp it,
Sure.
because that's the foundational habits. You know what I mean? For anybody,
Yeah.
male, female, it doesn't matter. All of that ties into your health and wellness.
Yeah. Do you find yourself talking a lot about habits as you talk about wellness?
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think habits go hand in hand. Establishing those habits go hand in hand with being consistent. And it doesn't always have to be, in fact, I prefer it not to be that they're taking away something. Add in, 2 more glasses of water a day. Let's add in that extra protein.
Not just a no.
Right.
Let's
It's
say
not
yes
just
to
a
something
no.
else.
Yeah, I don't want anybody to view it as a negative change, but more as a positive change in that, they get to do, it looks better if you get to do something versus, hey, no, you can't ever have that scoop of ice cream again.
Right.
And you've got to have things in moderation. I believe in living life.
Yeah.
I believe in enjoying life, and not being super extreme, because once again, that's not sustainable.
Not realistic.
It's not
no.
sustainable.
No, very few people live that way, and they're not normal. They're not.
Right.
So people can, and you look at them like that's why you're Tiger Woods, like
Yeah.
or whatever. Like you can do that. That's not a normal kind of personality that can do all of that.
Right.
Well, thanks so much for coming on.
Well,
It's been a
thank you
joy
for
to
having
meet
me.
you and hear from you, and thanks for all the work you're doing.
Of course. Thank you so much.